Get to the topic. Part of our panel discussion that day, the first one was really talking about more of a general idea of how has the pandemic impacted the issues that you're seeing involved in that litigation and involved in valuation. And we don't want to get too deep into valuation because that'll be the next question, but give us a general idea of where you see the greatest impact as far as the pandemic has been.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen it really across the board. And like you said, we'll get into some of the specifics on valuation, but the reason that we get calls to be brought in to do a valuation in the first place, of course, have changed to some degree. Anytime there's massive changes in a regulatory or economic environment, we may see the demand for valuations from different perspectives. So in times of suppressed economic activity, we may see an acceleration in valuations for estate and gift tax purposes because people want to be able to gift more with their lifetime exemption limit than they might otherwise be able to do in a booming economy. Litigation, of course, is always going to be there. Mergers and acquisitions, interestingly, of course, did take a hit in terms of total activity, but those companies that are still attractive, even in a COVID environment, are very attractive, and therefore market participants are still fairly active in looking at businesses, considering whether or not they should make an acquisition, or considering whether it's time to get out. And so there's been some consulting on considering whether or not it's time to exit the business. So those are some major issues. Of course, we keep speaking with our bankruptcy attorney friends who tell us the wave of bankruptcies and Chapter 11 work is coming, which of course requires a substantial amount of valuation work in it as well as regular financial advisory services. So we're hearing a lot of discussion in those areas. Candidly, I haven't seen as much of it as we thought we would at this point. But we do expect that wave is going to hit, probably over the next 12 months.
What's interesting, and recalling back on what we discussed at the panels, is, the theme was, and you verified that things kind of got paused for a little while, right? So there was a pause, there was a moment where everybody had to kind of catch their breath. And once people caught their breath, activity started again. Now the dynamics might have changed a little bit, but there's still a lot of activity out there in terms of transactions and the possibility of transactions. Maybe the players have changed a little bit. Maybe the valuations have changed a little bit, but there's still a lot of activity. Is that true?
Absolutely. And the fact is, in a private equity space, in the venture capital space, there's still a lot of dry powder out there. There's a lot of cash available to make investments. The real question is, in a COVID environment, where does the smart money go? And moreover, if you think about private equity groups in a private equity fund, you may want to take a look at that fund's cash flow, and they may now want to hedge against a downside economy by putting some companies in that are still performing well on a cash flow basis, even in the COVID economy. So I agree that the target companies, the industries that are attractive have probably changed, but those in the space are still very actively looking at deals in the right place.
So, again, reflecting on what you just said and thinking back, you mentioned the industry shifts, right? Where the businesses are that now people are looking at and moving away from some industries, moving into other industries. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, I think clearly technology companies, software-based companies that don't require, face-to-face interaction, those types of things are very attractive now. SaaS companies, software as a services companies, were already popular and already getting very high multiples. This type of environment is even more attractive potentially for them. On the downside, of course, you have the retail sector, which has been demolished. They continue to get hammered, but up to be seen yet whether or not they're able to recover once a vaccine comes out, or whether or not consumer habits have really just fully shifted.
Sure.
But you've seen a number of bankruptcies in those spaces, or in that space in the retail sector. But there are a number that are doing well. Professional services, interestingly enough, seem to be doing fairly well. Medical practices, obviously, for elective medical procedures, did get hit pretty hard. But regular professional services companies, I think, have done fairly well. And it'll be interesting to see how they progress moving forward. I think a lot of them are considering reductions in their overhead in terms of rental space for their staff. Some people are getting very comfortable with working from home, and that may have a negative trickle-down effect into commercial real estate. Sure. 6, 12, 18 months down the line. So this is one of those things that periodically happens in human history that may have a transformative effect in a number of industries over time.
The one industry that was mentioned, and you kind of touched on it, was restaurant and recreation, right?
Sure.
So those two industries just have been smashed. Yeah. And while they probably had their own challenges even before that, now it's the challenges in front of them are just enormous. Right?
That's right, and you can even get a little more nuanced than that. If you break down restaurants into white tablecloth sit-down dining, they've been hit very hard. If you look at restaurants that are a little bit, we'll call them lower scale, lower dollar point, fast food companies, or even one-off shops. My favorite burger joint right here in Towson, Burger Brothers, they're great, and they have, I'm sure, had a negative impact, but they don't really rely as much on seating in the restaurant. People can just come in and call in their order, come in, pick up their burger and go, and they're making it. And so there really is a very serious bifurcation in the types of companies that are really hammered, even within an industry, versus those that are able to just maneuver their business operations a little bit to make it through.
So I should be able to continue to get my Big Mac at McDonald's. I don't have to worry too much.
I think McDonald's is going to be okay.
We'll be okay.